What's going on, everyone? Charlie here. Good morning. Hope you're having a good weekend so far. I'm going to finish up the NSCC-013, the settlement acknowledgement, the passive settlement acknowledgement process that they've made for settling. And this is going to be part 2, and I'll go over, part 1. That way we're not lost. So last time in part 1, we looked at that if a settling bank does not acknowledge its settlement obligations, it causes settlement delays and also keeps other settling banks and AIP settling banks, which stands for Alternative Investment Product Settling Banks, from settling as well. Now, to fix this, the NSCC has proposed to create a similar passive acknowledgement process that the FICC and the DTC have, by where if a settling bank or AIP settling bank does not acknowledge their settlement obligations and cannot be reached via their most up-to-date contact information method, settlement will be considered acknowledged and they will be required to deliver on those obligations. This is potentially huge, and we're going to look at the rest of this filing, which basically has to deal with the definition change of settling bank and some other changes as well. So, part 2, amend the definition of AIP settling bank to correspond with the definition of settling bank and remove AIP settling bank only member as a membership category. The proposed change would amend the definition of AIP settling bank to correspond with the definition of settling bank and remove AIP settling bank only member as a membership category. AIP settling bank is currently defined as either 1, an AIP member which is a bank or trust company meeting certain criteria, or 2, an AIP settling bank only member meeting certain criteria and which have entered into an effective appointment of AIP settling bank and AIP settling bank agreements. AIP settling bank is currently defined. We just went over that. Now, since the inception of AIP, members have used number 1, or A, members that are banks or trust companies meeting certain criteria. And okay, that's basically what we just said. Now, since the inception of AIP, there have been no AIP members that have acted as AIP settling banks, and there have been no entities that have become AIP settling bank only members, which is why they're getting rid of this category of membership. Now, the proposed change would amend the definition of AIP settling bank in Rule 1 to provide that an AIP settling bank would be either 1, a member which is a bank or trust company meeting certain criteria, or 2, a settling bank only member meeting certain criteria and which has entered into an effective settling bank agreement which would be identical to the definition of a settling bank. Now, the definition of settling bank agreement distinguishes between settling banks and AIP settling banks by indicating that in the settling bank agreement entered into by an AIP settling bank, the AIP settling bank undertakes to perform settlement services for the AIP member or the AIP non-member fund, which is a party thereto, whereas settling banks make such undertakings with respect to members and limited members that are not AIP members. In addition, NSCC would delete the definition of AIP settling bank only member in Rule 1 and remove the term throughout the rules, including a description of AIP settling bank only members in Section 2 of Rule 2. And the reason they're getting rid of this, again, is because no one has used this membership category. NSCC would also change the reference to 2 of Rule 2 in the definition of AIP settling bank to Section 2, Paragraph F of Rule 2 to reflect that it's referring to a member which would qualify as a settling bank only member rather than an AIP settling bank only member. In addition, NSCC would amend Section 5 of Rule 3 to provide the NSCC shall maintain a list of members and settling bank only members that have agreed to act as AIP settling banks to reflect that AIP members would use members and settling bank only members as AIP settling banks as discussed above. Now, Part 3 is to codify certain settlement processes. Currently, there are a number of settlement processes used in AIP settlement that are not explicitly set forth in the rules. These processes are the same processes that are set forth in the Section D1 of Procedure 8 with respect to EOD settlement, which stands for End of Day Settlement, and would be added in Section 9 of Rule 55 as follows. A statement that DTC will act as settlement agent for NSCC and the AIP settling banks in a new subsection B. A requirement that AIP settling banks must acknowledge by the AIP acknowledgement cutoff time via the terminal system their AIP debit balance and their AIP credit balance and their intention to settle or refuse to settle by the AIP acknowledgement cutoff time in a new subsection B. As proposed above, there would be an AIP acknowledgement cutoff time with respect to AIP settlement for the AIP debt balance and the AIP credit balances. Also, a statement that if AIP settling banks has an AIP debit balance, then the AIP settling bank's account at the Federal Reserve Bank will be debited. If the AIP settling bank has an AIP credit balance, then the AIP settling bank's Federal Reserve Bank account will be credited in new subsection C. Also, a statement that if AIP settling bank sends a refusal message, it must acknowledge its new AIP debit balance and AIP credit balance by the AIP acknowledgement cutoff time via the terminal system and its intention to settle in new subsection D. And lastly, a statement that the AIP settling bank that cannot send an acknowledgement or refusal message may contact the settlement agent and instruct the settlement agent to act on its behalf in new subsection F. Now, we just learned that the settlement agent will be the DTC, so shit could get interesting here on this one. Now, this is the last one here, a proposed change to allow NSCC to exclude NSCC settling bank balance from NSS file. The proposed rule change would provide that if 1, a passive acknowledgement does not apply because the NSCC settling bank has notified the settlement agent that it cannot yet acknowledge or refuse its settlement balance, and 2, the payment deadline established by NSCC is approaching, then the NSCC would have the ability to exclude the NSCC settling bank settlement balance from the NSS file, which would basically allow them to settle. It wouldn't prevent the other settling banks from settling at that time, which currently how the rules are set up, that's the problem, is that if someone doesn't acknowledge or refuses its settlement balance, then it prevents the other banks from also settling. So as described above, as it gets closer to the payment deadline, NSCC may need to remove the NSCC member's balance from the NSS file in order to allow settlement to be completed for the other NSCC settling banks that are part of the NSS file. As NSCC would be codifying its current practice with this proposed rule change, this proposed change would not change the current settlement process of NSCC settling banks that are excluded from the file. Basically, banks can no longer ignore acknowledgement. They have to notify the settling bank, which is the DTC. Settlement should become less congested. I should say should. And cutoff time for acknowledgement passive process has been established, just like the FICC and the DTC. So maybe we get some settlement cleared up. That would be nice, because you know what that means. Payday. Anyways, here's some relevant stuff for you. Have a good one.